everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen, and a lot of people are very concerned that they will see massive bankruptcies in the coming year or two, especially if interest rates continue to go up, and they are going to continue to go up, and we'll go into that in a second. But first, looking at this article from Global News, M&P did a study or a survey, and in that survey it showed that, and I quote, 1/3 of Canadians say they're now unable to cover their monthly bills while keeping up with their debt repayments, up 8 points on the index since September. Households that are still making ends meet have around $630 left at the end of the month, down nearly 30% from over $890 in July. And overall, almost half of Canadians, 48%, say they are within $200 of not being able to meet their financial obligations, up 6 points since September. And finishing it off, over 40% are worried they'll be in financial trouble if interest rates keep rising, with 1 in 3 afraid they may face bankruptcy. And there is a vast amount of issues that play into this problem, and we will go into that in a second. But as a matter of fact, well, here we go. According to Reuters, Bank of Canada to start 2018 with a hike, despite NAFTA risks. So, the globalist regulatory complex that is basically standing in the way of, sovereign markets, the ability for people to, freely grow demand by the individual. Instead, it's pushed into this global complex, which really does risk a lot when it comes to not just employment, but of course, when it comes to the competition of businesses, small businesses growing, etc. If it wasn't enough that there's countless taxes that are holding them down, regulations that are propping up big corporations and shoving small businesses out of the market, taxes as well. It just grows and grows and grows, and it all kind of comes back to the central banking system, the government. We will go into that further in a second. But John, I want you to go into the fear of bankruptcy that so many Canadians have today. Of course, you wrote a book that really went deep into this issue called Canada, the Greatest Economy in the World, ? Which is up on Amazon. Yeah. Can you go into that?
And here's the question mark, right? It's this whole recovery or whatever you can call it. It's the United States, of course, crashed in 2008, while Canada just continued climbing up the debt mountain as they're trying to be able to afford a living. And that's what you're seeing here. People have less and less money to afford a living, $200 away from not being able to pay your bills. That's pretty damaging statistics there. And this is, of course, coming through the whole system here, where you have the taxation of the government, which makes people go heavily in debt because of the taxation. And, of course, the inflation is also making the money that they make, all the people here that they're talking about, losing its value on the top of that. So people are getting hit both sides here by the taxation from the government and the decrease in the value from the government as well. So they're getting hit by a double whammy here. Meanwhile, there's nothing we really could do about this, because the government is just going to continue to increase and grow unless we actually start to educate. Well, we've been educating people for a very long time, and more people are waking up. And especially they're been reading this book. A lot more people are starting to see through this whole smoke and mirrors that the Trudeau government are doing, but increasing even more taxes this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not obviously Trudeau himself is too stupid to even tie his own shoes.
So he's government.
Exactly. There's the people behind the scenes, and there is a lot more to go into with the interest rates out of desperation by central bankers, etc. And we'll go into that in a second. But I wanted to go through 2 talking points that we've gone over quite a few times before here at WAM, which is that all fiat currencies eventually revert to their intrinsic value of 0. They always have, they always will, going back to 1024 AD in China. And it's not going to be different this time, folks. And looking at people have been praising the fact that, or the idea that the Canadian dollar is going up, when in reality it's the US dollar that is going down. So in comparison, it looks like it's going up. Both are devaluing. And another one that, the Liberals love to praise, they shove it in our face. It's like, well, look, the job numbers are great. Unemployment is going down at an insane pace. Well, no, actually it isn't when you look at the labor force participation rate. They switch around numbers. They trick you. It's all a bunch of magic tricks in order to fool the minds of the masses, because, let's face it, the Liberal government is very unpopular, just like the Conservative government was very unpopular, and it comes to the point where you have to ask, Why do people keep thinking that one thing is going to make a difference in government?
Yeah.
Government won't solve the problems of government. You as an individual will solve the problems of government. But going into the interest rates, John, I think this is important because there is a desperate move to kind of push interest rates up, especially in the United States, but we are seeing a massive hike in Canada.
Well, you got to remember also here in Canada, they need to lower interest rates when it crashes, Josh, because every single market, stock market around the world will follow the United States stock market. And of course, the Canadian stock market is very heavily overvalued as
Delicious,
well.
yeah.
It's not as bad because we actually have seen, the commodities being down, which actually Canada is very dependent upon, which they don't understand over in Ottawa. But you need to understand that naturally the interest rates will be pushed up now, and they will go up, and they're trying desperately to get them up in order to get them high enough so they could drop them down again when the next big crisis comes, because we were so close there in Canada. Canada has been propped up by all this cheap money. It's probably one of the biggest bubbles in the world right now. With the housing market, the credit market, as you can see, there's a lot of people in a lot of debt here in Canada. Together with other socialist countries like my favorite home country, Norway, all these countries are really starting to see a lot of struggles right now because their recovery and their economy has been based upon debt, and this Keynesian idea of believing that you can just get into more debt in order to pay the old debt down in order to create inflation to lower the value of the debt that you created in the first place. And they think they can run this cycle on rinse and repeat over and over and over again. But the problem is at one point the populace is going to say enough is enough when they can't afford food on the table.
Absolutely, and it's already getting to that point as I questioned Trudeau myself on before I infamously call him a scumbag because I was getting pushed around by security and that guy sneered at me and gave me just a bad feeling. Anyway, when I questioned him, it was about the fact that how do you feel about Canadians having to choose between heating their homes and feeding their families in the winter due to the carbon tax, among many other taxes, of course. And, obviously no answers. I stick by my pledge to blah, 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 tax people's, the breath people breathe. But anyway, going further into this, we are looking at this interest hike on around Wednesday. So as this article goes into, analysts expect the Bank of Canada to raise rates 3 times this year, starting on Wednesday with a 25 basis point increase that will take the benchmark borrowing cost to 1.25%. The central bank raised rates twice back-to-back last year as it removed monetary stimulus it put in place in 2015 amid a collapse in the price of oil, a major export for Canada. And of course, we are seeing kind of a growth in how many times they're going to raise these rates, how much effort they're going to put into this. And look at this joke of a quote from Brian DePrato, a senior economist at TD, who says, "The ongoing strength in the Canadian economy no longer justifies emergency-level interest rates." Well, okay, I think you're being a little bit over bullish, and it's kind of like that, sparkly-eyed euphoria that people feel when they see a market go way up. It's like everything's going to be okay.
Well, it's the centrally planned Keynesians that believe now they're going to have a little bit of a slow, push off, with the interest rate, just taking them slow and slow in a couple, 3-4 years, pushing them slowly up. The problem is all this debt that they created is now going to implode because of those slow little increments in interest rates. All that money slushing around that have been borrowed to everybody and that everybody got into in order to survive because the economy wasn't doing that well in the first place. So it's just listening to these people. I don't know if they have a clue at all. Some of these guys that have PhDs in economics, it just takes a little bit of education.
I bet you the guy went to the London School of Economics. They always do.
It's just a point of take a little bit of time reading more than your PhD curriculum at these academic schools. Just read past the 90 years that you learn about, and then well, there's a whole nother story. And how about learning about the almost 400 plus currencies that failed in the 19th century, in the 20th century alone?
Well, look at this, John. I mean, at the moment, the household debt-to-income ratio stood at 171.1% in the third quarter last year, and that kind of plays into that whole debt pyramid where they constantly try and push people into debt because if you're shoved down a bottomless pit of debt, you are forced to ask for a ladder up from the government and the banking system, which puts you in perfect servitude. That's exactly where they want you. A populace in debt and a populace in fear is a populace in servitude, and that is what they're trying to push towards at the fastest rate they humanly can. It's all about having you on your knees, and it's absolutely disgusting. And of course, just quickly going into that NAFTA decision, we're looking at that later this month, and of course it coincides with Davos, the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland is happening on, I think, January 23rd or so. And always expect bad decisions to be made around that time because the global orders are given. And that is where people should be concerned. And we're about to go into solutions. But John, you look like you're checking something out.
I'm just looking at the global numbers for private debt to GDP. I always like to talk about that because of the taxes are so high and the correlation between high tax countries and that debt to GDP ratio. Now, Canada, at the time I was writing my book, Canada was number 10 in the world. Now they're number 7, so they've risen up quite a bit. And this is only the 2016 numbers. We were waiting still for the 2017 numbers to come in.
We were waiting a long time for the 2016 numbers last year, I remember.
Yeah, it's 266% to GDP, which is all the private sector's debt that they've gotten into. So it's almost 3 times the economy that's debt right now, and it's just going to increase the number in 2017 by looking at these posts that are talking about people being so strained because they're so heavily indebted.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why we have to come down to the solutions, which we always give at the end of our videos, because no problem can be solved without a solution. That's kind of the point. So looking at food, water, shelter, self-defense here, not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block, and then of course that which is decentralized, cryptocurrencies, gold, silver, tangible assets, self-responsibility, self-sustainability, because you cannot have freedom without responsibility. It is a hallmark. And looking at the cryptocurrencies, be careful, do your own due diligence. There's a lot of altcoins in the market that are very soon to crash, I do believe, because there's too much euphoria around certain coins that have no fundamentals.
Are you talking about the Canadian dollar?
Well, yeah, that too. That's the worst of all the altcoins, along with the US dollar. Anyway, yeah, just stay out of the fiat system as much as you humanly can. I know it's impossible to fully pull out these days, and the tax man's always after you, etc., from the private CRA and all that. So you have to just do whatever you can humanly to protect yourself and protect your family. So number 1 is learning about the issue. Number 2 is applying solutions. Number 3 is the change you wish to see, and that is you.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's why it's so important to pick up this book, all you great Canadians out there, and learn about this and pass it on to your family, because your family is among these numbers, and we need to help and save these people by understanding the economy and how important it is to be self-sufficient and getting away from this animal farm that everybody's living on, getting ready to get slaughtered and enslaved by the Trudeau puppet government. Where, I believe if you let this go on, we might have a Kim Jong-un situation here in Canada on our hands.
That Trudeau is a big fan of communism.
Yeah, I know. So that's why we need to really fight back by educating people and showing them, especially the book that I have for the Canadian populace, and really go out there and talk to people, because if we don't, we're going to just end up with the same cycle over and over again, and people are going to hate the left and the right, while they should be hating the government instead of looking for solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the perfect situation for the government, is to have everyone fighting each other instead of the real enemy. But with that said, one more plug I got to mention. Every Saturday on We Are Change, I do host a show on cryptocurrencies. Make sure to check that out. It's brand new. We just aired our first episode last Saturday, and we're going to keep going at it. We Are Change is on YouTube, of course, one of the biggest independent medias in the world. So proud to be on there. And until next time, we will continue to break down these issues, because they are never ending. The news is always right in our face, just slapping us from all ends, and we got to make some sense of it. So until next time, thanks for going into this with us, John. And this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth,
be the change.
Like what you see here at WAM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so overwhelmingly demonetized and censored by YouTube, as the Anti-Defamation League comes in and flags all of our content as hate speech. You can also find me at Josh Sigurdson at steemit.com. That's steemit.com, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post via Steem, the cryptocurrency. You can also find our Bitcoin address in the description and the comments below, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And don't forget to come on down to Anarchapulco in Acapulco, Mexico in February, one of the best events of the year, and you can save money on your tickets by typing in promo code WAM. That's WAM. We'll leave the link below for you, and until next time, don't forget to subscribe. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
Wow.